Yeah, sure. So I think the general idea of ladder climber view is, first off, you're the climber, okay? And development, the lifelong process of growing up through multiple stages of development is sort of like a ladder that consists of multiple rungs. So the question is, when you move from one rung to the next rung, what's included and what isn't? And this is where we get to into the previous question. So what Derwin's pointing to is basically saying, which is what Ken Wilber is saying, is that the rungs themselves are what's included. And those are called enduring structures. But the view from those rungs, that's not included. And those are always left behind. And those are called transitional structures.
Okay, so I'm amber and I'm moving to modern. So
Yeah.
I'm moving amber to orange. I'm traditional to orange. And so the rung of traditionalism stays with me. That's there.
Yep.
But I can no longer think as a traditionalist because I have this whole new strata of capacity online.
That's right. You don't interpret the world. You don't have the same framing. You don't have the same vantage point on the world as you did when you were at that previous stage of development. It may be a simpler way to look at it is, as we grow, we sort of unfold from first person to second person to third person views. Well, when we're at the first person stage, the only perspective we can take is a first person view. So our view is inherently narcissistic and self-centered because that's literally the only perspective we can take. Yeah. When we grow and we hit second person, and then later on down the line, we hit the third person, we no longer have that exclusive first person view on the world, but we still have access to first person perspectives.
Yeah.
So that's the wrong that stays.
Yeah. And as Derwin says, we can remember what it's like, and we can feel into and empathize and so forth, but we can't be limited. We can't uncook the egg.
Yeah, that's right. So, even the Buddha started at square one, and, he ended up, throughout his life on, way up the ladder. And yet the Buddha still needs to eat and shit every day, right? That there's that rung of development that's never left behind.
I don't want to think about that.
Well, and I think this is, I think this is important for a lot of reasons, but first and foremost, I think it's critical for us as we have these conversations to remember the distinction between, something like a view versus values. So, for example, the left really spends a lot of time and energy ridiculing and marginalizing a lot of the, problematic views of the right, particularly the ones that come out of that red or amber level of development. And that's where we find things like racism, sexism, xenophobia, homophobia. Those are the views of this amber stage of development. And they should be negated. Those views are no longer compatible with the center of gravity of civilization today. But the thing that I think a lot of liberals, or just a lot of folks on the left, forget is, those are all views, and those should be sort of marginalized out of culture. But things like the drive for safety, the drive for belongingness, the need to have a shared group identity, the need to have some degree of moral certainty, the need for enduring traditions. I mean, these aren't the views of Amber. These are the core values of Amber. Right. And I think that the more the left continues to only address the problematic views without actually trying to acknowledge and understand and account for the values, the underfed values of the Amber stage, well, that's where the really nasty views come from, is from those values, first and foremost, not being met, not being fulfilled. Yeah. And when you're not fulfilled, you tip over really easy into these, again, these really nasty kind of views. And the green has its own version of that, with the postmodern stage of development. The rung of postmodernism is, like you said, multiculturalism, contextualism, constructivism, aperspectivalism. But Green's ability to fulfill those values, to see them fulfilled in the world, is often sabotaged by their own views, like pathological views, like outrage culture and moral relativism, cultural relativism, the denial of cultural development altogether is a view of green that actually prevents sort of a full-throated multiculturalism from coming online in a
well, which is what green is. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to fight traditionalism. Traditionalism is supposed to fight them. And the solution to the problem is integral.
That's right.
You know,
right.
actually it is. It's you know, so we even be friendly to our green sisters and brothers.
Yep.
And, you know, everybody in between on the gender spectrum, because they're actually creating new territory and staking out new grounds.
That's right.
That help all of us.
Yep.
So that actually gets us to our next question. So
yeah, well, it does. Well, and just because I want to put a bow on the previous question in terms of what do we include and what do we leave behind. I mean, that I think that sets up the answer in a certain kind of way. You include the values, but you negate the views. You leave the views behind, which I think is important. You know, if there's any future politicians out there listening, I think this is critical in terms of political skillful means, because if you want to eliminate those really malevolent views that are out there, you've got to make sure you're speaking to that underlying core of, you know, the underlying core values that these people don't feel like are actually being addressed in today's political system.
Right on, man. Well said.
Oh, and I'm sorry, Jeff. I also want to tie this back to the Star Wars question, because, you know, one of the things I've been fascinated with is the reaction of the fan base to Star Wars and how many people, you know, didn't enjoy it. And one of the big reasons, I think, one of the big reasons why people didn't enjoy it is because they walk around with this nostalgia. They remember what the original movies felt like when they were kids. And then they watch these movies and they don't feel the same way. But of course not. Of course you don't feel that. You're not at that stage anymore, right? So nostalgia itself is a memory of a previous view that we once had that we can never really get back to again.
I know.
And that's why nostalgia is usually so sort of disappointing, you know, like I get in these nostalgia kicks where I look at
that's why the present is so disappointing too.
Yeah, totally.
You know, how does it stack up to a hagiography of our past?
That's right. You literally cannot enact this thing the same way you did when you were 7 years old. So of course it's going to feel different.
I know. I hate that.
Yeah.
All right.